The Juneau World Affairs Council and Veterans for Peace Chapter 100, in collaboration with KTOO, present the 2025 Juneau World Affairs Forum on Ratified, the International Law of the Sea Treaties, and their potential for protecting Arctic resources and cultures. In this session, we hear from U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski. She is directly involved in leading bipartisan efforts urging the U.S. Senate to ratify the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. Murkowski is Alaska's senior United States Senator.
Well, hi there, everyone. I want to thank Bruce and the Juneau World Affairs Forum, as well as Chapter 100 veterans for inviting me to join your event and for taking such an in-depth look at these treaties and their potential impacts on Alaska and on the country. I had really hoped to participate live, but as you know, we're dealing with a government shutdown. Everything's in chaos back here, including my schedule. So the opportunity to be able to do this by video and not by Zoom, our time zones just aren't measuring up. So thank you for this opportunity. Know that my team and I are pushing hard to reopen the government and help Alaskans that are impacted by the shutdown. So if there's anything that you need we can help with, be in touch with us. So as we navigate that, again, I appreciate your flexibility in shifting to a recorded message because I really didn't want to miss the opportunity to share my perspective on this. This is probably the most substantial event I've participated in on these topics. I particularly appreciate the format that you've chosen, where competing views can be expressed civilly as part of a substantive discussion about the whole issue. Now, it won't surprise any of you to hear that I've long been a supporter of ratification of the Law of the Sea Treaty. You won't ever hear me say that the UN process is perfect or even great, but I do believe it is in America's interests and in Alaska's interests for there to be stable rules reflecting our interests and priorities, and that the nations of the world abide. We helped establish the post-World War II rules-based order, and it would be a shame. It would be a shame for us to abandon it, allowing the likes of China and Russia to replace us in shaping and leading it so that they advance their interests at the expense of our own. And that's true everywhere, including our oceans. What happens in the oceans is not abstract for Alaska. It's about fisheries, it's shipping, climate, resources, and of course security in our backyard. UNCLOS is a rules-based foundation for governing our oceans. Many call it the Constitution of the Seas. And today, every other Arctic nation is a party, but we are not. And that, I think, is a problem. Until we are, the U.S. cannot fully assert our extended continental shelf claims in the Arctic, even though we've spent decades mapping them. Leaders from the U.S. Navy and other defense agencies have been pretty clear on this. Ratification would strengthen our legal standing in the freedom of navigation operations, including in the Arctic and the South China Sea. And I share that view. And I would point out that ratification would provide us with geopolitical and strategic advantages, starting with new territory and resources, but really extending even beyond that. The implementing agreement for UNCLOS states that the country with the largest GDP back in 1994, which was the United States, will have the only permanent seat on the Council of the International Seabed Authority. That would give us the ability to shape the Council's decisions, advancing the good and blocking the potentially bad. Unless, of course, we're nowhere to be found. The lack of ratification has created uncertainty that has been prohibitive to continued U.S. business investments in deep-sea mining. In our absence, China has gained the largest stake in leases for deep-sea mineral exploration granted by the International Seabed Authority, while U.S. claims that predate UNCLOS are lost and mapped over. So the bottom line is that ratifying UNCLOS won't give away our sovereignty. It would serve to strengthen it. Now, I understand you are also discussing the High Seas Treaty, often referred to as the BBNJ. This is a new layer. The UN adopted it in 2023. 74 countries, not including the United States, have ratified it, and it will enter into force early next year. The BBNJ creates a framework for conserving and sustainably using marine biodiversity in areas on the high seas. And many of our Alaska fisheries depend on healthy migratory species and ecosystems that move beyond our 200-mile EEZ. Science partnerships, like UAF research, are central to how the U.S. will contribute. So there's a lot that we can gain by participating. And again, there's a downside to sitting it out. If we don't engage, others like China, the EU, Russia, they'll set the rules, and they won't prioritize our opportunities or our concerns. In fact, some would likely seek to exploit them. But the U.S. has signed the BBNJ treaty and is considering ratification. If that happens, Alaskans, our fishermen, scientists, indigenous knowledge holders will need to shape how implementation unfolds. It's really important to recognize the connections here. These treaties aren't abstract. They're linked pieces of global ocean governance. Ratifying UNCLOS would give the U.S. a full seat at the table to determine how BBNJ is implemented. And that wouldn't give away our rights or our resources, and that wouldn't work against our strategic interests. But without UNCLOS ratification, our leverage in high seas governance will remain limited. And for Alaska, it's about ensuring our science, our security, our fisheries, and all of our interests and resources are represented. I care about these treaties because Alaska alone makes America an Arctic nation. And we see firsthand the strategic and the environmental stake of ocean governance. The U.S. cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. Ratifying UNCLOS and engaging on BBNJ means securing America's leadership in the world's oceans and protecting Alaska's future. To help prompt genuine progress from us, I've offered a resolution in the Senate calling for ratification of UNCLOS. It's Senate Resolution 331. And I'm co-leading it, once again, with my colleague from Hawaii, Senator Mazie Hirono. And I'm proud to report that 9 additional colleagues have signed on with their support. We're continuing to make the case for ratification because it's just simply the right thing to do. So I appreciate all of you diving into this at such great depth, with all views represented to fully engage in a debate. I think that's the best way to make an informed decision. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share the message. Wish that it could have been more interactive, but I wanted to make sure that you heard my views, and I'm looking forward to hearing yours. Hope these discussions are productive, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much.
Okay, do we have Dana on board? I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Dana Herndon, who I've had the pleasure and to serve as her colleague, and since I was a congressional fellow, but now as her friend, and we still continue to collaborate on these difficult issues. She's a force of nature in the Senate as a staffer, leading the Arctic portfolio, which isn't just an Arctic portfolio. It has to touch all the portfolios in that office too, transportation, health, everything. It's very complex. She's also the lead on UNCLOS, as you heard, and she's also the lead on appropriations, which is unbelievably difficult. She has incredible skills and understands how this works. So I'd like to now invite you to please come up and ask questions about all the stuff we've been talking about all afternoon. Everything Betsy covered and previous speakers, because Dana knows this stuff. And now is the time to ask her about what does this mean in the Senate? What does this mean in the halls of Congress? How does this work in DC? How do you manage this? What are some insights you might be willing to share? So please, if you could, let's line up and we'll start asking questions. And I'm here to help if needed.
Thanks for the intro, Troy. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Thanks for taking time to be here and talk to us. My name is Tim Banaszak, and I don't know, maybe I'll just throw a couple of things out there and see if you can comment on it. I was back in D.C. for the American Boating Congress, kind of advocating for maritime in the U.S., and that was really good, and I think our work there was received pretty well. I'm doing a little bit of work internationally, with international commissions as it deals with safety, life at sea in the maritime area. We heard some today about making sure that areas that we engage in have the U.S. in mind, and obviously, and particularly around Alaska too, for us. Some of the work that I'm doing overseas, I'm just wondering if you have any guidance, any thoughts, and the work is around some of our international standards, International Services Organization, International Electrotechnical. And I serve on some of those committees and chair some domestic international or national committees. And just from your perspective, globally, and representing the U.S. in those conversations, just any guidance you have or thoughts, and maybe there's not enough detail in there to pick from that, but any guidance you'd have just to make sure that I have kind of the appropriate perspective, sideboards, and guidelines when you're dealing internationally representing the U.S. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, knowing what you just told me, I would say with international work and conversations like that, I would look to existing international frameworks and forums and see how you can get plugged into those. I'm not sure if in your commission right now you have any work with or contact with those who may be working on some of the Arctic Council working groups. I saw Paul there, and I know he's involved with some of the Arctic Council working group, the maritime one. So I don't know. Those forums are still active. I mean, they are slightly diminished. I mean, Russia is currently not involved on like the ministerial level, but from researcher to researcher, or people on the ground, there's still that conversation going on. So I would just say reaching out and engaging and having those conversations, there's still a lot of open lanes and willingness to do that. And so, and also our office, I mean, I'm happy to learn more so that I can help connect you with folks.
Dana, I'd be interested in your assessment of the prospects of moving to ratification, particularly during the Trump era, but whether circumstances are changing in terms of more discussion or focus on deep sea mining, for example, that might create some propulsion in favor of ratification. Just your assessment of where things might end up over the next couple of years.
Right. Okay. So Troy and I did a lot of good work when we were working together in DC, and we were actually able to get 2 more Republican co-sponsors on the resolution. Before, it was Senator Murkowski was the sole Republican lead on that, or sponsor on that. So we were able to build some traction. That was really positive. Then administrations changed, and now we have a different approach to multilateralism, and we have a Republican Senate, Republican House, Republican administration. So it's a little bit harder now, more of an uphill battle. I would say there's still appetite from Republican members to learn more, especially when it comes to the opportunities created through the president's executive order that he signed in April that have to do with deep sea mining. So there's more appetite for that, but I don't know if that would lead to exact sponsorship on the resolution at this time. We need to build more bipartisan support. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in this Congress. I think we have a couple more years to build that momentum even more. Thankfully, we were able to get farther than we ever have last Congress, so we're working with that in our favor. There's still a lot more work to do, but right now, I'm not expecting to have this come up as a floor vote. We still have to get some time for it to have a hearing in the committee, which is something that I've worked consistently on. But right now, since we have the Republican majority and the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is he's famously opposed to this, as are other members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the majority. So, right now we're building more momentum on the ground. It's going to take a while, but I think ratification it's not going to be in the next couple years. Right now is when we're going to have to kind of build more of our foundation to move that forward. I don't think the conversation's over yet, though. There's still hope.
There's something that Dana was instrumental in finding a way to have this conversation, which is, if there's one thing in the nation we are all unified and united behind, it's China.
Yeah.
That's given us an opening. And if we can connect these issues to China, which Congress is very active in, the Select Bipartisan Committee in the House on CCP is very strong. This is our way in, and Dana is very instrumental in making those connections and showing how our lack of being an UNCLOS is starting to cause big problems with China exploiting that. And she's really leading the way, and this is getting her in the door.
Well, that's really kind. I can't take all that credit, but
she's getting in the door, using those talking points, showing and demonstrating this is for real. It's different. It's different now. Here's how, and it's working.
I'm interested to see how the executive orders on the deep sea mining will play out, because China really has advanced in terms of capabilities for the deep sea mining exploration and then exploitation and then refining. So I mean, they have the whole vertical integration, and so we are woefully behind because we have not been party to the treaty. Even though we have these EOs, it's still, for me, and in my assessment, it's still difficult for those companies, deep sea mining companies, to really have the confidence or the ability to get financing or insurance. So I do think that might move the needle, is because I do think EOs ratification will in the long run be what will give the industry the confidence we need in order to be able to compete with China.
So I wonder where the senator stands on the BB&J treaty. Has she worked to achieve ratification on that treaty? And it seems to me that a big problem that we have in Alaska now is that because our natives have had to work through other countries, like through Canada and other countries, in order to get their views known in the area of that treaty. So just where is the senator on that?
So, I mean, she supports the ratification of that. It's another layer within UNCLOS. We haven't done a specific resolution for that like we have with UNCLOS, but the support is there.
I have something for you on that, Dana. For this particular event, I was able to do a deep dive into how does BB&J matter to Alaska, and that's caused me to go deeper into things we worked on and really give specifics, and I think I got some good stuff for you.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Dana. Thank you. So after hearing Stephen Groves and just some of the questions that Troy and I and others have been talking about, and thinking about China and thinking about the fact that our international order is changing, what will it take to persuade the Senate that it is in our national interest? Like, let's take a strict view that we're only going to do what's in our national interest, forget all the other countries. But how is it not clear to them that having a stronger counterweight like China running the show is in our national interest? Like, there's no way that is. And what would it, I guess I'm also sort of asking, if you were talking to all the legal and policy scholars out here, what sort of research do you need, or arguments or new ideas are you looking for to help persuade the Senate?
Honestly, it would be outreach from the industry itself,
Yep.
from industry.
And is
To
that
get-
forthcoming, or you think that the EXO will, or the EO, excuse me, will generate enough response?
We have our own efforts that we're doing kind of in the background to garner that support, and so we're working our own angles for that.
Okay.
But I think it would have to be multiple voices outside of just Capitol Hill, specifically our office.
Thank you.
Can you speak a little bit to how the metals company is sort of factored and shaped and helped inform this so far?
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly how to answer that, but I immediately thought of the metals company announcement when that they made in April before this EO, and that really kind of locked in, I think, Mr. Groves's argument that we don't need ratification just because they were able to say that they were aligning with the administration on this executive order that would bypass the International Seabed Authority, deep sea mining regulations work that they've been doing for many years. And so I'm going on a tangent here, but when I think of the metals company, that announcement didn't really help for long-term ratification work that we were doing.
Great.
Dana, Bill Leedy here. We haven't
Hi,
talked.
good
We
to
haven't
see
talked in a
you.
spell. It's all my fault. I haven't called you up. Might Alaska have a card to play via its congressional delegation or otherwise, because the sea has a lot of commercial traffic on it, called ships, and the IMO, International Maritime Organization, has said we've got to clean up our act here and clean up our fuel, and so we're not putting so much CO2 and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And 2 years ago, Juneau and the ports of Southeast Alaska, Vancouver and Seattle said, let's start a green corridor project whereby we're going to commit ourselves or try our best to get our fuel cleaner. And they hired McKinney Maersk Moeller as a consulting firm, and their first report is out due soon. I wonder if that would be a lever that might find some resonance in Congress to say, let's work on this together. It happens to do with climate change and other things that we're not allowed to speak to certain parties, but still, is there an opportunity there?
I think there's opportunity, absolutely, with just shipping routes in general, and especially the increased use of the NSR with China. I forget what they were calling. It was like the Euro-China Express and whatnot. I mean, there's just way more traffic there. There's concern that Russia is allowing non-polar code compliant vessels to go through. I mean, which increases the chances of oil spills. And so there's definitely that appetite for having that discussion and using that angle. I mean, it's very real, it's very tangible. And the consequences are, severe, for things to go wrong and for there not to be more of a game plan. And specifically to Green Corridor, not sure how to answer that question. Like you said, the word climate is bad right now. What we've been doing is pairing climate with national security and telling the story that way. So
Obviously, the cruise ship companies think this has something to do with economic security for them.
Right.
This could yet be just greenwashing. I gave a presentation last week in Seattle at the Green Hydrogen Summit on a plant to manufacture green and clean marine fuels.
Oh, okay.
To be built north of Seattle at Cherry Point, probably, good place as any, to allow bunkering the cruise ships that originate at the ports of Seattle and Vancouver, BC, with clean and green fuels that would be made from deep hot dry rock geothermal energy
Wow.
right at the site. So if you'd like, I will email you a copy
Yes.
of that application.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as we know, we're in shutdown, and next week it looks like we'll still be in shutdown. So I would love to have that conversation with our team sometime next week, because we'll be here and we'll have time.
Nothing better to do, huh? Okay, thank you.
I think we got time for one more.
Hi, Dana. Jim Clark.
Hi, Jim.
I hope you're doing well back in D.C. We miss you here. But any event, one of the major reasons for us signing on to UNCLOS is the support from the Navy and the military. Has that support still been there with the change of administrations?
Well, we haven't seen or heard otherwise, but I don't know if they would be as forthcoming as they were before. No.
So you're not going to ask?
If I was able to get a commitment from SFRC majority to have UNCLOS business meeting, I would definitely explore having the Navy participate.
But you'd want to know the answer first.
I would want to know if they were consistent with all of their opinions of this in the past. I for some reason I feel like it might change.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Definitely be a reaction to Washington, D.C.'s current situation. But please understand that, with UNCLOS, it's two very important parts always at play. UNCLOS represents not only international law, but also operational law. And this is why operating agencies like Coast Guards and others, they need just as much to be part of this and have that clarity and have the ability to do their business as much as lawyers and diplomats. So, and we're very lucky that Dana's here to lead this for the senator, making progress. Not easy, but if anyone can do it, it's her.
Thank you. Too kind. Thank you, everyone. This is. I hope you enjoyed the past couple days or day of programming. And Bruce, I'm really glad that you chose this topic to really dive into. And thank you guys for your support.
Thank you.
That was Senator Lisa Murkowski discussing the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It was recorded October 10th, 2025 at KTOO on the unceded territories of the Occoquan on Tlingit-Ani as part of the 2025 Juneau World Affairs Forum, Unratified, the International Law of the Sea Treaties and their potential for protecting Arctic resources and cultures. Produced by the Juneau World Affairs Council and Veterans for Peace Chapter 100 in collaboration with KTOO. With support from Core Alaska Kensington Mine, Wastman & Associates, Ramada Inn,